Okay, it's 8:12 p.m. Sunday night, November 19th. I just wanted to give you guys a quick little sneak peek into what I've been working on, what we've been working on, show you some of the new stuff, describe a little bit about the update, upgrade. Basically, everything has had a major overhaul and update, upgrade. We found some problems with NinjaTrader 7 with the way that the data series are handled. It's really only a problem for us because of what we're doing, all the advanced stuff with, being able to read the signals from the other charts, being able to read all of the market geometry stuff from all of the other charts, and to be able to manage all of that from this user interface here. So in working with all of these things over the past about a year and a half or so, anyway, in working with these, the readers and, trying to get the signals, trying to access the data from the other charts without having to run any of those calculations so that we can build out these, extensive rule sets as far as for, the combinations of market geometry coming together, and then the volume signals from the different charts, the divergence signals from the different charts. To be able to do that efficiently and accurately and get the data essentially without any latency has been just a massive ordeal. Sometimes a signal might be missed. Other times we might get the signal for more than a bar or two. Historically, oftentimes they weren't exactly in sync or lined up properly. And we were experiencing a lot of different failures. So we finally figured all of that out. And it's just been a massive project. But anyway, it's looking like we're just about done with it. We've performed a massive overhaul on pretty much every piece of software that we've created. And I've also created here a new bar type, and I'll go over that here in a moment. I'm showing this now because I'm thinking that Crude is about to set up a short here, and I've got Blackbird enabled, so I wanted to see if it wouldn't get into a trade here while I'm filming this. I've redesigned everything for a bit more simplicity. I think it was a little overly complex before, and I've actually cleaned up the workspaces quite a bit as well. So rather than so many different charts, I've limited it to 6 charts per workspace. So the largest one being this hourly chart, and you can see why I'm looking at getting into a short here. We're back into Friday's close, back into where this median line intersects the channel, back into the underside of this upsloping channel. I'm not so sure that we're going to go down to a new low, but I would expect to make it back, very likely to make it back to this midline here. So we have volume divergence there. The volume analyst has had a lot of tweaks to it, bug fixes. We've actually added in sort of a condition building section here. I know this is pretty advanced stuff, what I'm going to show you briefly, but what we can do with the volume divergence setups and the triggers even, we can link it to Divergences Pro and require that there be, a divergence setup, single, double, or triple, and or any other volume signal here. So we could require that, for the volume divergence setup, there actually has to be a churn bar or a climax for that final, in this case at a high, for that final swing high, that last bar. And you can set the number of bars before or after, so as long as there's a churn bar, within 2 bars to the right or 2 bars to the left, and you can change all of that. You can set AND logic, OR logic, and you can have 2 sets of conditions with up to 3 different conditions for each set. So this is pretty nice. And then for the NinjaTrader 8 upgrade, I've actually redesigned quite a bit of this to try and clean up the signals a little bit, to give the user more advanced controls for anybody that's really wanting to get in there and define precisely what you want. Only look for really extreme climaxes or churn or the 2-bar pattern of volume divergence or whatever. You can really get in there and customize it to exactly what you want. And we're actually going to put in some presets like we did for the Divergences Pro so that you won't necessarily need to know or understand any of those really advanced conditions, but you'll just simply be able to choose from a drop-down menu basically, I think I'll have like 4 or 5 different options as far as like strength of signal. So we'll probably just have a drop down with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which will change the settings. But then after that, you would be able to go in there and modify some of those. I've actually added in some momentum filters for the climax signals. We're going to add in some price action candlestick type conditions. So we're going to do quite a bit of upgrade for the NinjaTrader 8 version, which should be available by the end of the month. Anyway, we have the hourly chart. You can see I've added, with this bar type, which I'll explain momentarily, I've added a new chart style, which sets it to a high, low, and a close. So it gets rid of the open, and it actually allows you to change the little dot for the closing price to whatever color that you want for up or down closing. It's not up on the site. There's no information about it, but I'll be creating that information tomorrow. All right, so 1 hourly chart, 1 15-minute chart, and you can see how the volume is already cleaned up quite a bit. In Ninja 8, it's going to be even more precise. So hourly 15-minute 1 tick chart, similar to about a 5-minute chart during the day session, maybe just a little bit larger at times or a little bit smaller. And then of course our 5-minute chart. I might get lucky here. If it does pull back, we'll have volume divergence there as well. So hourly 15-minute 1 tick chart, 5-minute, and then my 2 new custom bar types that I've created here. So what I have on this one chart, this will be for all that have the most recent upgrade with the indicator reader, which will allow us to read bloodhound signals from any other chart, basically read any signal from any indicator from any other chart, even reading the VWAP or moving averages or whatever. And then now that indicator reader will actually copy multicolored plots. Let me just show you that really briefly. Okay, the 5-minute chart on the left, I have the MACD BB lines, which has multiple plots with varying colors. This is that custom bar type that I've created here. I'm going to add the indicator reader and then find that plot from the 5-minute chart here. So we have multiple 5-minute charts. Let's see, it's going to be a different 5-minute chart, the newest one. There it is right there. Not panel 1, but panel 2, MACD BB lines version 4. From this workspace, and I'm not using this for a signal, I'm just plotting it on the chart. So I'll select show plots, and since it's not a data series giving me like a +1 or -1 for a signal, they're just plots, I'll set it to last and OK. And you see that? So it's actually copying all the plots with the color, which in this case is based on upsloping, downsloping. Yeah. Isn't that pretty cool? So that's the indicator reader, and that is what allows us to read the signals from this chart onto my strategy chart, which is that other faster time frame here with that custom bar type. So you can see here it would have shorted already right there at the high. I just didn't have it activated. So what it is, the chart on the left is actually doing all of the market geometry confluence stuff so that I don't have to have everything on one chart. So I've split it up. I've put all the market geometry on this chart here, which is typically about the size of a 2-minute chart normally. And then over here, this would typically be about the size of a 30-second chart. And that's the one that I have the confirming template. So the one on the left defines the areas from which I can trade, and the one on the right defines the confirmation for those signals. And depending upon the size of the wave, which I've got defined here, it will trigger the signal according to those 4 different possibilities here. So it's not something you want to just flip the switch and leave it on running blindly, fully automatic. Obviously, it requires that the market geometry be updated, but now rather than having all of those different charts for each instrument that you have to update the market geometry on, there will just be 4. So what I did with these charts here, this new bar type, is, let me show you like this. I had Blackbird on a 30-second chart. The problem with those 30-second charts, sometimes, and especially out, around news announcements and very fast-moving sections of market, we could get to the point to where we had, a massive reversal bar, and by the time we would get into the trade, it might be 20 or 25 ticks away from the area, and then our stop would have to be so big. And then, other times, especially in the overnight, there might be a couple of periods, a couple of 30-second periods back to back where you didn't even have a trade, or maybe you only had one trade. So you'd be potentially missing data, or just have maybe one tick for that time period. And it just made for a pretty ugly chart with a lot of random volume signals. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to design a bar. I've been thinking about this for years, but I finally got to the point to where I was so fed up with what I was dealing with that I just went ahead and designed it. Essentially what it is, it's a hybrid between range, tick, and seconds. And I did that because, number one, I wanted to have a minimum range for each bar. So in this case, this is a minimum range of 1. Well, I've added in both minimums and maximums for range, tick, and second. So what does that mean? That means that we have 3 minimums, a minimum for the range, a minimum for the ticks, and a minimum for the seconds. And then we have maximums for each of those. So min and max range, min and max number of ticks, min and max number of seconds. And you don't necessarily have to use the maximums, but if you do want to, you just set the last number of each property to the multiple of the min that you want to use as the max. I know this is incredibly complicated, but you'll see the difference between the charts here in a moment and see why this has actually been a pretty incredible breakthrough for us. In this case, it's the last number of each set that provides the maximum multiple. So this would be a 1 range minimum with a 8 times 1 and 8 range maximum, a 250 tick minimum with an 8 times 250, 2000 maximum, and a 30-second minimum with a 30 times 5, 2.5 minute maximum. So if any maximum is met, it will instantly open a new bar. Okay? Otherwise, all 3 minimums must be met before it opens a new bar. So I did that specifically for the volume and the confirmation signals, the divergence in the volume, because let me just show you a little bit right here. This is what I'm after here. You see this little section of market? In this case, this is sort of the overnight. We're starting to get into the morning here. In this little section, it's acting more like a tick chart than it is a second chart. It'll start to act more like a 30-second chart. In this case, this is a minute and a half. It's more like it's 90 seconds, but it has a maximum of 450 seconds. So a minute and a half minimum with a 7.5 minute maximum and a 2 range minimum. So no bar will ever be less than a 2 range. So essentially what this does, what it helps with, is isolating those climactic moves, those really fast moves into an area, either up or down, into a high, hitting resistance, and then seeing that resistance very clearly come in. For example, just right here, I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? You've got a big buying climax here, followed by a narrow range, high volume churn bar. You've got a churn bar right there, which knocks it sideways for a while. You've got the same thing going on here. You've got a climax followed by a churn and another wide-ranging high-volume bar with very high density closing off of the highs. And it's a pretty strong sign of hitting resistance, supply coming in. It's also a volume divergence, which is all automated now, obviously. So I wanted a chart that would really work to confirm our areas in the market geometry much more effectively and really let me look into, what's happening with the volume on a bar by bar basis, but be able, really be able to control that bar as thoroughly as possible, not only with a minimum range, but also with a maximum range, such that if I do get a reversal bar, if it hits the area and then starts moving back up, the bar will never be over 16 ticks. In this case, on the trade chart, it'll never be over 8 ticks. So this is a 1-minute chart of ZB, and you can see there are several 1-minute periods in the overnight that don't even get a trade. Or maybe you just get 1 tick. So the ZB intraday is really pretty ugly. And I don't like having to use, only a tick chart. I want to use both minute and tick. But for something like the ZB, really any market that has not a lot of movement in the overnight, really not a lot of movement in general, but especially not in the overnight. I wanted to really clean this thing up, and that's what this bar type does. It cleans it up, but still allows for really identifying those climactic moves. So it's not like a range chart where every bar is going to be the same exact range, and then you can't look at wide ranging or narrow ranging bars. You can't get as good of a feel of price action. And then with tick charts, you don't have really strong identification of climactic moves either, because they'll be spread out over a couple of few bars, whereas on a minute chart, it would just be one really strong fast move within 1 or 2 bars. That same climax on a tick chart, relatively sized, would be spread out over a number of bars. So with this, we still retain those wide variance possibilities in the range from one bar to the next, so we can still see those climaxes very well, and also the narrow range churn bars. So this really is the best bar type that we could possibly make for these confirmation type signals. So this is the ES 30 second. You can see how sparse that is in the overnight. And then this is the ES 1 range 500 tick 30 second. So a lot nicer, right? And we can still see those wide ranging bars and narrow ranging bars. Let me see if I have any of these with volume already on them. This is well, let me show you the 5-minute chart first. Okay, there's the 5-minute with the overnight. A lot of nasty mess in here in the overnight. You do have see, these last couple of bars don't really show the climax there. It shows up very well right here, that 2-bar pattern there, big buying climax followed by a narrow range, really high volume per range churn bar there. And then the same kind of a thing going on here, selling climax followed by a churn bar. But you look at all of this on a tick chart, a similarly sized tick chart like we have right here, and you don't see any of that. You see a few churn bars here back to back, but really the tick chart is mostly for looking at volume per tick to identify how many contracts per tick are coming in, to try and identify those whales coming in, the guys trading the large number of contracts per trade. While I would say it is useful information, volume per tick, it's still not, it's like anything else. It works in certain situations. But here, that buying climax, you see you've got a little climax here. But you see what I mean with the tick chart? It takes up a few bars here and a few bars here. Whereas on the 5-minute, it's just a couple of bars, or even right here, it's just really 2 bars. But with this new bar, the volume signals are a lot more obvious. They really stand out. Look at this. I mean, you've got a huge extreme churn bar there. Very high volume. It's a huge volume divergence. And you see what I mean? You see how it smooths out those bars that are kind of following the tick settings more than the second settings. So it's more governed by the range and the tick. And then when you get that really high volume move, then it starts to move more like a time-based chart, which is really what you want to identify these specific signals. So that's why I've developed this bar type. And it's really key for what we're doing. So now moving on to the Divergences Pro, we've added in some stop and target levels based on the size of these divergence signals. Now, this is a double divergence. You see how it's descending here as prices continuing to make higher highs, oscillators making lower highs. So we have sort of sideways waning momentum. What it's doing is it's looking at the lowest low from the start of the pattern to the high, and it's set to, you see those lines right here? Negative 61.8 and 1, so I think it's 200 actually, let's see. Yeah, negative 61.8, or really 161.8 and 200. And you can set those to whatever values you want, but you can now backtest with that and actually, attach orders to those lines using the readers inside of Blackbird, that automated system I'm about to show you. So that's one of the main things that we've added into Divergences Pro. And I think we've got it slimmed down a little bit more, so it will be a little bit faster in the market analyzer. And I've got the Divergences Pro built right into that, not using the reader, but the actual indicator itself on a 5-minute chart with the RSI, and it runs just fine. I've got several futures contracts, a Forex, and then these stocks. There aren't any data coming through for the stocks right now, but it is showing several of these stocks ended with bullish and bearish divergence here. So that should be working a little bit better. A lot of different fixes to the volume analyst. I'm not going to go into all the details there. Tons of fixes for the toolbar. Like I said, the reader system's been completely rebuilt. Toolbar is working magnificently. We've really sped it up. Evidently, the slowing down that some of you experienced, that I've been experiencing, was due to the market geometry. So we've actually put all of those calculations onto, I think onto another thread. I can't remember exactly what we did to speed that up, but it's way, way faster now. So anyway, I'm just going to give you a little glimpse into the reader manager here. So I won't worry about showing you all the details, but we can control all of the readers inside all of these Bloodhound templates, Market Analyzer templates, actual Blackbird templates, all from right here. Essentially what the deal is now with this, when you start Ninja up and you connect to data, all the charts have loaded, everything's active, you just refresh all right here with this button and then recalculate all, and they will remain connected perfectly until data is disconnected. So if you ever get a disconnect and then it reconnects, it might have possibly disconnected the readers, but if it did, it will tell you the status. Okay, so it's getting pretty late here, and I still want to show you how all this works inside of Bloodhound and Blackbird. So I'll just force it to take a trade here in a second and then show you how we manage those trades, setting the different areas in the market geometry to different colors, one for profit target, one for stop loss. I won't go into all the details of all of that. I started off making this video for current users, current owners, but I'll probably just put this up as a public video. So I realize a lot of you likely won't have a solid understanding of what all I'm talking about. So let me just run down very quickly what it is that we do. We're using this toolbar for performing all of the market geometry analysis, which would be, like this, where I have a trend channel, and rather than using that high, I'm using this lower high as opposed to that crude oil report high, and I'm combining the market geometry across multiple time frames to identify the areas that I want to trade from, and then I use the volume, our volume analyst and Divergences Pro on the subsequently faster time frames to confirm those areas that I'm trading from. And with this whole reader system, you just saw me show this reader manager. That allows me to control the signals, access to the lines, the values of those lines, bars touching those lines from any other chart, and bring that information into Bloodhound and Blackbird, which allows us to automate trades. So I'm just going to, enter a trade manually using Blackbird and then show you how we attach the orders offset to different lines on the different charts. One will be the 5-minute, the other will be the 1600 tick for setting the profit targets and stop losses. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and go into doing that now and then wrap this thing up. Okay, so let's... Order pending. We have 60 seconds to figure out where we want to put the stop and the target. You can change that. You can make it as large or as small as you want. It's just not going to update the orders until after, 1 minute. Typically, you'll know before you get into a trade where you want to put your stop and your target, but initially they'll just go in at 6 times the average range, one at 6, one at 4.5, and then the profit target will go in at 18 and 13.5 times the average range. So about 3 to 1 automatically, and then you can start tightening up that stop. There, you see it just tightened up 56.88, and now I'll put one of the targets, I'll just pick a random line, I'll put it right here, change that to spring green. You see it brings that order up here. That's all being done automatically now, and it will update every 20 seconds, I think, 20 or 30 seconds. And then we put the other profit target, we attach that to an area on the tick chart. So set that to green, and that attaches the order to that line. And that's using our line color readers which are very, very cool. We actually have a rectangle color reader too, so I could draw, you know, depending on the lines that I have, if I don't have all the areas coming together that I want, and I still want to make it take a trade, if it comes up into a spot, I can draw rectangle wherever I want, and if price comes up into that rectangle, and we get the confirming signals from the volume and the divergence on the different time frames depending upon the size of the trade, then it will take the trade from within that rectangle that I draw, the white rectangle. And that's actually this one right here, rectangle color reader, white rectangle on the 5-minute chart. Okay, so that's how it works. Now these orders will follow those lines until the trade either hits the profit targets or the stop losses. I'm going to close this order filled, and then actually leave it on because I think it's going to come back up in here and get this volume divergence signal here on this 5-minute chart. So yeah, this is the 5 minutes, so that's where I'm expecting it to come back into. Yes, we're already starting to put in that rounded look here on the hourly. So one more push up into this high, and I think we'll have a temporary little high there. All right, so that's it. All right, bye for now. Okay, cool. Well, I left it on overnight, and it actually did come up and hit the area here on the hourly chart right where the two lines intersect almost perfectly. Sorry, I'm misreading this. This is actually, it's a little early in the morning. It's, what, 6:45? It went through this downsloping trend channel line, and up into the underside of this center median line and larger upsloping channel. So it must have already taken off the one contract here on this line. So one order was attached to this area on the 1600 tick, and the other one was attached, let me grab my 5-minute chart. Yeah, the other one is attached right here. So I changed the color of this trend line here from low to low to the spring green, and that attached the order to that line. And it looks like we're almost there. Surely it'll come down and hit that. I don't know, we still have an hour and 15 minutes to the open. I'll let it ride. I didn't put in a line for the stop because, you know, I went to bed obviously long before it took this trade, but it did have volume divergence here, and you can see the trigger here. But of course I got filled on the high. Let's look at the faster confirmation charts here. Let's see. Nice, look at that. That's what I mean right there. You see how the volume does on this? That big buying climax, which is a massive amount of volume per range, very high density. So that's the larger of the two charts that I have the new bar type on. You can see here it came back to the top of that channel on the tick chart, and let's see where it entered this. Nice, look at that. Man, talk about lucky. So a massive, look at that. See what I mean about these bar types? Pretty amazing. So a huge buying climax, very high volume per second at what, like 2:30 in the morning? 2:50. That's perfect. Now, I just want to tighten this up. Put it just behind that previous swing high there. And I'll pause this and then turn it back on when it starts getting a little bit closer. Okay, it's just after 7. Okay, nice. It looks like it. I got kind of worried there for a minute. Let me just run a little bit of market geometry here. Yeah, see, we're already at the bottom of this channel. Well, we're about to break through it, it looks like. I might get lucky here in a second. Let me delete this. Yeah, we've pulled back into the point of control here, and it's breaking lower. We're almost at the low volume node of this swing. It looks like we'll probably come below 56. We'll get back into this high volume here, and the VWAP from the low. So my order is pretty much on the midpoint of last week. The volume weighted average price of last week. Ooh, it's getting a little support right in here right now, though. I'm tempted to just close this and be done with it. Well, let me just leave it where it's at, because that is the uptrend line from these little lows here. I'm just curious what size retracement it is. Yeah, so the 50 retracement would be at 56.07. It'll probably hit that. That's the midpoint from Friday as well, right about 10 or 11. Looks like it'll be the bottom of this channel as well at about 09. So I'm probably fine there at 14. It's kind of a big selling climax there. That is double divergence there as well. Pretty high volume per second. All right, I'll pause this and we'll see what happens. All right, well, I should have gotten out on that bar. It's likely going to keep going lower, but I've got so much to do today. I'm just going to go ahead and close this out. I hate to do that, but I need to, hurry up and edit this video and get to work on a ton of stuff here. But anyway, pretty nice way to end this video. I thought for sure this would set up. I just, thought it was going to happen first thing Sunday night. But anyway, pretty cool way to end the video. There you have it. You see it's, it's just one example, but this is really pretty powerful stuff. So the update will definitely be out on Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving, and we are definitely making that happen. Okay, so major updates to all of the software, and
Order filled.
Nice way to end it. I wish I would have just closed it right there, but whatever. It's likely going to go below 56. It looks to me like, let me just run a little. Yeah, see, we've hit that center median line, so we'll probably come to right in here at least, and then probably down into this point of control and the VWAP from the low into some of this higher volume back in here. It could come down to a new low, but I would expect a fairly significant low in here today at some point, somewhere just below 56, maybe just above 56, around the 56 area. And then, I won't have time to reassess it, but anyway, there you have it.